Dereta, dereta, dereta. Stoppa, stoppa, stoppa. Muokere, muokere. Hop, 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 hop. Non è muova. Ah, l'asparagus.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. So in the video today, I wanted to discuss two questions that I had asked from some of my subscribers in regards to rotations during your clinical year. So both of them were, first one was basically how long is each rotation, and the second one is how many hours or how many shifts are you required to do per rotation. So I will be answering that in this video. Now, I just want to start by saying that this can vary by program, but for my program, each clinical rotation is 5 weeks. So we have 5 weeks of the clinical rotation. We usually start on Monday and we usually end on a Thursday. The reason why we end on a Thursday is that we have our end of rotation exam, which is an exam over your entire clinical rotation, which is on that Friday. So that's why I say it's usually start on Monday and then on a Thursday. So that's why each rotation is 5 weeks each. Now, how many shifts are you required to work? For my ER, I was required to do 4 shifts a week, 12-hour shifts each. But honestly, this really depends on your preceptor or the individual that you are working with, whether it's a doctor, a physician assistant, or a nurse practitioner. It really depends on their schedule. For example, my ER doctor was a director of the ER, and he traveled a lot, he had a lot of meetings, so sometimes he would only work 3 shifts a week or 2 shifts a week. Rarely 4 shifts a week, so I only went in whenever he worked. And also, if he told me some certain days, he would tell me, hey, you can go, I'm not going to be here, you can go with this other doctor and shadow them, then that would be the only time. But most of the time it was usually 3 shifts a week because he was traveling or he had meetings, etc. Also, for my ER rotation, if you haven't seen my ER video, my doctor liked to pimp me a lot, and sometimes he would get frustrated with me and would send me home if I didn't know the answer. So instead of working the entire 12-hour shift, I would only work 4-hour shifts. And that was most of the time. I think the most I worked was like a 6-hour shift with him. So it really depends on your preceptor and also on the clinical rotation, to be honest with you. OB-GYN. So for example, OB-GYN was my second rotation, and OB-GYN was also 5 weeks with your exams also. And for my OB-GYN rotation, I followed my doctor wherever he went, whether it was in clinic. During lunchtime, he would go and see a patient in the hospital, whether she was in delivery, she was having contractions, so I would follow him everywhere. After clinic also, he would finish his clinic at 6 p.m., so I would be there from 8:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. If he had a patient in the hospital, he would usually ask me, do you want to go with me? Do you not want to go with me? I always said yes. I always said yes. I said yes, because you want to make sure that you let the doctor know or your preceptor know that you have that interest, because also a part of your grade is going to be their evaluation, how they evaluate you, whether you were there on time, whether you had a lot of absence, whether you showed interest, whether you were good with patients, taking history and physicals, doing physical examination, etc. You're going to fill out a preceptor evaluation at the end of the semester. And so you have to make sure that you're on your best behavior and you are good with the preceptors. So that's why I made sure I always said yes to whatever he asked me. If I wanted to go with him, if I wanted to accompany him, I always made sure I said yes with him every time. So sometimes, like at 6 p.m. when he got out, he had to go see a patient, so he would ask me, I would say yes. We would drive to the hospital, which was about 15 minutes away from his clinic, go to the hospital, and then I would follow him to wherever he was going. Whether there was a patient that was having contractions, sometimes you had to wait for the patient to dilate a certain amount of centimeters so they can have the baby. So sometimes, you know, that dilation would take a long time, so I would sit there and wait with him until the patient decided to dilate, and then whether he decided to do a C-section or a vaginal delivery, that was also it would take into account what time I got out. Sometimes I would get out at 9, 10, or 11. It really depended. So it really depends on your preceptor. Now, when it came down to my surgery rotation, those were a lot longer days than my OB-GYN rotation, because for my OB-GYN doctor, he only had deliveries like probably twice a week or once a week. And if he did, usually it was in between lunch. So I would still get out early, like at 6 or 5. And sometimes he would take Fridays off for himself. And so I was able to also take Fridays off. So it really depends on your preceptor. But then you have surgery. Well, surgery is a whole other ball game, but it really depends on your preceptor. My doctor worked a lot. and so he saw a lot of patients, he did a lot of surgeries. For example, on surgery days, my longest days were like Mondays and Fridays. Mondays I would go in at 6 a.m., wouldn't get out till 11 or 12 a.m. So those are really long days. Fridays I had clinic in the morning, and then on top of that I had surgery, so it was the same thing. I wouldn't get out till 12 or 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. So it really depends on your preceptor, on your rotation. I know some of my classmates had preceptors that let them go home early, like sometimes at 12 p.m., sometimes at 3 p.m., but it just really depended on your preceptor. And it's always important to always never ask to go home early. I know one of my prior classmates, from what I heard, had asked to go home early with my preceptor, and my preceptor did not let her. So you always go home whenever they let you. So sometimes there would be certain days, I guess you could tell my face that I was just exhausted, and he would see it and he would tell me, hey, go home, it's late, I'll see you on Monday. So he would let me go home like at 8, sometimes at 9, and that's early because sometimes he would do surgery until 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. And so that's why it's important not to ask. You always are for whatever your preceptor tells you, whether they let you go early or not. Some of the medical students I was with, they were actually with residents, so it was depending on the resident if they would let them go home early or not. So it really depends on the individual that you are with, the individual that you were following with, who is your preceptor, how many days a week you're going to work, what time you're going to get out. And in regards to clinical rotations, each lasts 5 weeks. You're required to go through Monday through Friday, or just follow whatever your preceptor tells you to do. And sometimes it can get a little tiring, and specifically for your surgery rotation, because we are required to log in every patient that we see. And for example, for my surgery rotation, my doctor would see on Tuesday, his clinic day, he would see about 60 patients. And thankfully, I'm a lot faster at logging in patients and inputting patients, but when I started my first rotation, it would take me about 15 to 20 minutes per patient for me to input all the information. But thankfully, I got quicker, and I'm able to input them as quickly as I can. So then on top of that, you have to do that. And then on top of that, you have to study for your exams, do quizzes, do blogs. So my surgery rotation was really tough. It was very straining. I lost a lot of weight. I really enjoyed the rotation though. And it was a great rotation. I wouldn't do surgery as a PA because I just feel like it's not for me, but I really enjoyed the rotation. My preceptor was amazing. But yeah, just answering those questions: how many hours a week are you required to work, and how long are each rotation? So I hope this video was helpful for you guys, for those of you who are interested in applying to PA school or about to start your surgery rotation. It really depends on your preceptor, to be honest with you, and also on your program. This is just my experience. I know other PA students can have different experiences for each rotation. Alright guys, thanks for watching my videos. As always, if you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up. Any feedback from me, please comment below, or just send me an email if you have any questions, and I will answer them as soon as I can, or just send me an Instagram message. Alright guys, thanks for watching my videos, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.